21st Century Reviews, bringing you the review for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, or as I like to call it, the apparent attempt at the death of a franchise, because that's pretty much what Star Trek The Final Frontier was all about. Now, sadly, unfortunately, this movie does get a bad rap from most of the fans and critics alike. It is the only Trek film directed by its star, William Shatner. Leonard Nimoy had kind of bowed out of that role, but also this movie was supposed to be the last chapter of this particular franchise. Thank goodness Star Trek VI came along to at least give it some redemption. Otherwise, this would have been the final chapter, and boy, that would have sucked. On that note, though, I will say that there was a lot of things I read in trivia through IMDb that actually changed my mind about a lot of what I had already thought was the case of Star Trek The Final Frontier, and I'll kind of go over some of those things. This movie sadly sits as kind of like the relaxed fit denim of Star Trek. It's basically sort of a take on the aging characters that we've all come to love and know, but like it just kind of starts out with them all on vacation, just kind of hanging out and just doing whatever. Apparently jet boots are required to make yourself have Superman complexes. Bones likes to make bourbon and beans, which unfortunately he was unaware that Tennessee whiskey is not bourbon, so that's just something to point out to him that he might want to remember next time. And of course, the ever popular marshmallow toasting, because no one's ever heard of a marshmallow before. However, I can sum this movie up. That's the sound of this movie creating a vacuum, or as most people would know, blows. Because this movie does blow, unfortunately. It's my least favorite of the Trek franchise. Most people would love to get into the argument with me over whether Star Trek I, the motion picture, or Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, is the worst. Sorry guys, I know you hate on the pajamas of the first one, and the god-awful sound scores of the first one, but you know what? This one just flat out blows, as Chekhov pointed out. We spend the first 20 minutes of this movie watching our favorite crew member characters of Star Trek go on vacation. We're introduced to a laughing Vulcan character that no one knows, and quite frankly, no one cares about, because he's just the asshole guy from Cocktail who was mean to Tom Cruise. But to be honest, I mean, the cohesion of this movie is just terrible. The cinematography is very grainy. The quality of the sound scores in conjunction with the video is terrible. Even the theme song in it doesn't have the same feel to it as, say, the other ones do. Not that it necessarily has to, but it doesn't line up, pretty much like most everything else in this movie. And it just has problems, like the scene that you're seeing in the picture right now of the guys just sitting around a campfire singing "Row, row, row your boat," getting drunk and eating beans. It's funny, and I'll admit, me and my wife used to have quite a good laugh reenacting this scene when we'd go to bed at night, but I do have to go on record by saying, it's still stupid. It's funny, but it's stupid. And unfortunately, there's really not a whole lot of good I can actually give to this because, again, stupid. And it blows. In case any of you forgot what that sounds like, just thought I'd bring it up. So again, this movie introduces us to the character of Sybok, Spock's supposed half-brother that we've never ever in all the 20 years of Star Trek lore that we've read, watched, and fallen head over heels for have we ever heard of. Not one mention of him, and yet mysteriously he just happens to show up in a movie that happens to reference a lot about what family is about, because we get to experience what McCoy's experience was with dealing with the loss of his father, Spock's half-brother, mixed with the fact of his father's mixed feelings about his birth being half-human, Kirk's inability to deal with just losing and with death in general. He's uncomfortable with it. It's very cliche, and unfortunately one of the roots of this whole thing is the discussion of God. Now, I'm not going to get into a large religious debate in this. This is a Star Trek movie review, but unfortunately this movie asks an awful lot of questions that, to be quite honest, are better off left in a theological debate in a university hall, and not one that's conducted by Kevin Sorbo in a movie called God's Not Dead, because we don't really need to go there, now do we? Instead, we can have Sybok talking to God on a mysterious planet in the center of the galaxy that no one's ever heard of, being chased by the Klingons for no apparent reason whatsoever other than to try and squeeze one off on the Federation. And speaking of the Klingons in this movie, do these two not look like they would just not only make the cutest couple ever and that they would be great at a Tupperware party, but not only that, I think they actually would be really great roadies at a Motley Crue concert. I can imagine Tommy Lee smacking some drumsticks together and these two jamming out on the out front, headbanging a lot, testing the mic, and making sure that there's no Snickers wrappers for the artists to trip over on the stage, because that would be unfortunate. Kapla! So anyway, the crew is sent to the planet Nimbus 3, where that Sybok has apparently taken prisoner a Federation, Klingon, and Romulan ambassador for no reason whatsoever other than to attract the attention of all three governments, which is funny because the Starfleet responds readily, the Klingons respond readily, and yet the Romulans, they don't give a shit. Or wait, that probably wasn't in the budget to actually bring them into this movie past the weird-looking lady that they got to play their ambassador. Anyway, so for an completely incoherent reason, after Kirk was ordered specifically not to engage the enemy and get involved with them, the first thing he does when he lands on the planet is engage the enemy and attempt to overtake them violently. Again, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's some comic value to some of the puns that they make. You get to see Spock actually give a Vulcan nerve pinch to an alien unicorn wannabe horse. You get to see Kirk headlong a three-breasted kitty cat stripper. Everything, things of this nature. It's quite comical because you actually end up sitting there and kind of rubbing your eyes at it and going, "Did I just see that? I mean, seriously, did I just see that?" Because I'm not really 100% sure. Anyway, Sybok inexplicably gets to take command of the Enterprise and steals it and takes them to the center of the galaxy where they are still being in hot pursuit by the Klingons. You know, salt and pepper of Motley Crue. The Enterprise then breaks through the barrier after Sybok takes all three of the main characters on a emotional roller coaster of making them watch the most saddest things they've ever experienced in their whole lives, and then exposes them to the godlike entity on this weird-looking planet that, again, no one has ever seen before, and then will introduce us to a character that everyone should be very, very, very familiar with. And by that character that everybody should know, I do mean Ghostly Gandalf the White. Oh wait, no, sorry, wrong movie, woo, time out. I meant, God. Or all the other names that they come up with. It's kind of funny in one of the scenes, he says he's one voice with many faces, and he shows all these different, religious symbols like Buddha and Krishna and Abe Lincoln, because they had to throw Abe Lincoln in there somehow for some weird reason, and I've yet to figure that one out. Until they lead to the Santa Claus look-alike, or as I like to call him, Ghostly Gandalf, who glows with white eyes, shoots lightning bolts out of his face, and it has to, try to be, rationalize the reason why someone would ask him, what does God need with a starship? It is a good question, admittedly, but then again, he's a fake god, and that would just be why that whole scenario is just kind of goofy and slapstick, which ends up killing the protagonist, Sybok, when he challenges the will of so-called God. It kind of is an interesting moment to see the two clash, but then it just kind of like, he's like trying to psychoanalyze him, and that makes sense. So after Captain Casual Kirk here is rescued by gun-running Klingon bird of prey shooting Captain Spock, who happens to be sitting on the Klingon ship after they inexplicably attack the Enterprise for no reason whatsoever other than just to shoot at them. They end up saving Kirk's life, and thusly they end up having a big party at the end on the Enterprise where they all talk about the speculation of whether or not God is real and whether or not that, men like them really truly do have families, thus making the realization that they are indeed each other's family, and they, despite not having family outside of Starfleet, they should all respect each other, which, yes, is a good message, yada yada. Oh, did I mention the movie Blows by any chance? Just checking, I didn't remember. I realize that you guys probably think I just shit all over this movie, and well, quite frankly, I did. Which is why this movie gets the very, very astutely great award of... Okay, so was that gross? Yes, but you know what? There's another movie reviewer who generally that makes the bottom of the barrel some kind of equivalent to that, and his is quite comical as well, but I'm not going to rip his off. But to be quite honest, the golden turd is quite relevant in this case, because Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, is the golden turd. Sorry, but that's just kind of the way it is, so... It's definitely not one of my favorites. I will say as a footnote, though, to point out, because I think it's fair, this was the first Star Trek movie I ever got to see in the theater. I was all of 7 years old. It was an actually great experience just because it was the first time I'd ever seen a Trek movie. And, I actually will always remember seeing that gigantic bird of prey just rise above Captain Kirk on that cliffside. And to be honest, that was really cool to see in the movie theater. I mean, the music was epic with it. The delivery of that was really neat. The fact that they blew up God was it kind of messes up a kid at that particular point, but then again, he was a fake god, so whatever, it's cool. But again, thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Looking forward to hearing some actual feedback and critiques from some of the other YouTubers out there and everything. Again, try to be nice, but I mean, if you can't be, whatever, it's cool. I understand what social media is all about and everything. So, thanks for subscribing, and we're working on it.